Hey guys! So today we're going to talk about ad hoc stories and big, nice, juicy epics. So let's get into it. So yesterday we had not the final review. I am pretty sure that since I made the big mistake of making all my fixes to all the feedback that I got on one of my nice little massive stories, I'm pretty and I left it in the hands of my stakeholders before I went home for the day. I'm pretty sure that tomorrow I'm gonna get a bunch of, or rather when I get into the office, I'm gonna get a massive new list of things to fix. Now, one of the things that you should know about making interfaces for somebody is that if you show somebody an interface, they will have some feedback. Then you fix the things that they gave you feedback on and you show it to them again. They will give you more feedback, and then you fix those things and then they will give you more feedback, and then you fix those things and then it keeps on going and going and going and going and going. And one thing that I would say that this is probably one of, if not the most stressful thing for anybody who does front-end work or UI development and so forth. You will never ever get it right on the first try. Ever. Honest to God, I don't think it's possible. I've never ever been in a situation where I showed the work. Doesn't matter how hard I try, I cannot get it through the pipeline on the first try because there's always these tiny little details that people have an opinion on. This is the one thing that I really like about doing back-end work. Most of my the stakeholders, they don't you don't have that issue. They're not going to sit down and nitty-grit on every single little detail about every single little thing and have an opinion on it. Should it be that color? No, maybe this color was nicer. Oh no, I changed my opinion again. They don't do that. They just want it to work. Interfaces, different type of beast. So, for this specific story, we had a really, really massive one where basically it was an entire page. Massive page, tons of stuff that was going to be changed, and the beautiful thing about it is that we already have an existing page that is now being migrated and updated to reflect the page that was on the artboards right now. I had some concerns about this, and as I usually do, I air my concerns, and I say maybe instead of having like a big page rewrite like this, maybe we should, split it up into smaller chunks, like several small stories, so that we can specifically say that, okay, this component is this component, and it should go down there, and we want to update per feature, because basically the entire page is made up of components, and each component is a feature in of itself. And I said the reason why this is useful is because it's very easy when you have a really big UI, or if you have a big page, when you change all the things, and there's like 20 different things that needs to be updated, it's very easy to forget about all these things and miss things and so forth. And as you can imagine, that was not a great success. So we stick with the big story, because that is from a management's perspective easier to deal with. It's easier to have one story card instead of 20. Go figure, right? So we start working. And during this process, I kind of had this sneaky little idea, which is something that I like to do. And I really got to have a nice little I told you so moment just because of this. So what I will do is that I will loop people in. Like even if we have a really big story, every time I make an update to the UI or make a component change or something like that, I ask for feedback from my stakeholders, my product manager. Show the UI to the product manager, and then we iterate again and again and again and again and again. And then, because we have this nice little idea that this is basically an administrative panel, so the artboards aren't like a hard requirement. That's also something that you're going to notice. Sometimes it's very important that you are pixel precise about absolutely everything. Depends on the stakeholder. The designers usually want you to be pixel perfect, depending of course on what you're building. Since this is an administrative tool, the designer has kind of just thrown things together and the UI is basically just it's guidelines, if you will. And that's even worse, because if you can't trust that the artboards that you have been provided with, or the vision that people want you to build, is the thing that they actually want, it's just guidelines, then everything is open to interpretation, and things change all the time. As I said, people come in and they say, no, do this instead of that, and do that instead of that, and the scope, like they change the scope of the story all the time, over and over and over. And then finally, when it's time for the final review, which was the case that happened yesterday, they will sit down and try out everything as a whole, and then they will say these magic words. Wait a minute, this doesn't work as I expected. And then they will pull out the artboards and say, why isn't this looking the way it should be looking? It should look like this. Why doesn't it look like that? And then they will ask you, why doesn't it look that way? And this is where you get to say, well, what's interesting here, what I think is interesting, is that I just kind of went with the fastest thing I could make, because I couldn't trust the artboards, because we haven't taken the time to actually make sure that the thing that is being shown to me as the producer of this interface is the thing that you actually want. We don't really know what we want. All we know is that it should look roughly like this. So then this is something that's been overlooked. The second thing is that it's kind of interesting that you're mentioning this now, and not all the other times I've shown you where we are. I've shown you all the way what's being built, and it's only now that you notice that something's actually not with like how it should be with the artboard. And you're not noticing that because you're not looking at the artboard at the same time as you're looking at the interface. You're not comparing the two when you're making the evaluation. So you have not had a problem with this until you now sit for the final time and do like the match. And thirdly, why you have missed all these tiny little details, because there's always tons of feedback when it comes to this sort of thing. The reason why you haven't noticed all of this until now is because, as I've said before, you have a scoped story, a story that is scoped to an entire page. And when you have that size and that amount of features, because that's really all you're doing. You think that the page is one feature, but it's not. Every component is its own feature. Every component has logic, problems, considerations. All of that stuff is something that you have to take into to the process of developing. You're not, because you're not respecting each feature individually. You just want the whole thing built in one thing, in one go. And that's the same thing as trying to squeeze in an entire application into one story. That's a problem, because now, as you noticed, you're missing things as you go along, because you have all these different things that you need to consider at the same time. And we humans do not do well when there's a million things to consider at the same time. We do very well if the scope is very small and we can focus on one specific thing, or one very specific small area of that thing. So that's what I want you to take away from this, guys. When it comes to UI development, you will never, ever it's very unlikely that you will not, you will get it perfect on the first try. So you have to kind of deal with that. You will always get feedback back, always. Number two, try your best to treat each component of the interface as a story. Like, don't let them convince. Like, try if you can avoid having to make the whole interface at the same time, because there's tons of things like interactions. How is the modal supposed to work? Should there be a hover icon? Should there be a expand components? There's tons of stuff that goes into an interface that we don't consider, because we always look at the whole. We don't look at the specifics, but you have to look at the specifics if you want to write something of high quality. And thirdly, make sure that you're looping people in all the time, because, as I said, when they now come and they, like in almost a confrontation manner, ask me, why doesn't it look exactly as I want it to look? Well, then you can just look at them and say, well, I don't know. You sat next to me 5-6 times now, and you haven't said anything until now. So what's the deal? Have a great day.